Welcome to the Bookworm Duo, where we explore a variety of books. Let's get started. Today we are unpacking a book that is just going to take us on a wild ride.
It really is.
It starts in a hospital in Sierra Leone, takes a detour through Victorian fashion, somehow invents the cowboy hat, and then ends with this huge question about what a human life is actually worth.
That's a perfect summary. We are diving deep into Everything is Tuberculosis, the history and persistence of our deadliest infection by John Green.
And I know what you're thinking. John Green, the guy who wrote The Fault in Our Stars.
Right. Is he trying to make me cry again?
And the answer is yes, absolutely. But he's also going to make you laugh, which is maybe the weirdest part of this whole experience. This isn't just a history book. It feels more like, I don't know, an obsession.
That is the perfect word for it. Green is totally open about this. I think he says his wife jokes that in his head, everything is about tuberculosis, and tuberculosis is about everything.
And, once you start reading, you realize he might actually be right.
Well, the sheer scale of this thing is just hard to wrap your brain around.
Okay, hit us with the big number, the one that made me just, put the book down for a minute.
It's the 1 in 7 statistic. Researchers estimate that tuberculosis has killed roughly 1 in 7 people who have ever lived.
1 in 7 people who have ever walked the earth.
Yeah.
That is just, it's mind-boggling. I mean, we worry about sharks or plane crashes or these new viruses, but this one bacteria has just been in the background, quietly taking out a huge chunk of humanity for thousands of years.
And it's not ancient history, which is the big misconception. We all tend to think of TB as, something out of a Dickens novel.
All right, Victorian England.
But in 2023, it killed more people than malaria, typhoid, and war combined. Over 1.2 million people. It is currently the deadliest infectious disease on the planet.
And the kicker, the thing that really drives the whole narrative of this book, is that we've had a cure since the 1950s.
A working cure.
We know how to fix it. So the fact that it still exists on this scale isn't a scientific failure. It's a failure of something else entirely.
Exactly. And to understand that failure, Green structures the book in a really smart way. He weaves back and forth between this massive global history of the bacteria and the very specific, very intimate story of one person, a young man named Henry.
Let's start there where the book starts, with Henry. Because he's really the emotional anchor for all of this.
He is.
So John Green is in Sierra Leone, and he's not even there for TB, right? He's on a trip to learn about maternal health.
Yep. He's visiting Laka Hospital, and he spots this kid.
And the way he describes him is so vivid. He sees a boy with spindly legs, just looking so frail. He's wearing this massive, oversized rugby shirt.
The shirt hangs all the way down to his knees. So Green starts chatting with him, and the kid is charming, he's charismatic, speaks great English. So Green does the mental math and just assumes, okay, this is a bright 9-year-old.
Right, probably the son of a staff member or something, just hanging around.
Exactly. But then he asks Henry how old he is, and Henry says, I am 17.
The moment is just a punch in the gut. 17. But he looks nutty.
And that is the reality of the disease. Henry had been sick with tuberculosis since he was 5. For 12 years, the bacteria had been just consuming his energy, his nutrients, everything his body needed to grow. He was severely malnourished and physically stunted by it.
It brings a whole new meaning to that old-fashioned word for TB, consumption.
It literally consumes you.
But before we get deeper into Henry's battle, Green takes us on this fascinating detour into the past. Because before we knew TB was a bacteria eating us alive, we had some very strange ideas about it.
The Romantic era. I mean, this is one of the most surreal parts of human history. In the 19th century, especially in Europe, having TB was almost trendy.
Trendy. A deadly lung disease was trendy. That's insane.
It was the White Plague, but they had this term, spes thisica, the hope of the consumptive.
The hope of the consumptive. What does that even mean?
Well, because the symptoms, weight loss, pale skin, those bright red cheeks from the fever, it aligned perfectly with Victorian beauty standards. It was associated with sensitivity, with artistic genius, with this kind of spiritual purity.
Right, all the cool poets had it. Keats, the Brontes. If you were an artist in the 1800s and you didn't cough blood into a handkerchief, were you even trying?
It became this trope that we still see today. Green talks about Moulin Rouge or La Traviata. When a character in a movie does that little cough and pulls away a handkerchief with a single polite spot of blood,
you know it's over for them, but it's going to be a pretty death. They'll get to say a poetic goodbye, no suffering.
Which is a complete and total lie. Green is very graphic about the reality of it. Dying from TB is violent, it's drowning in your own fluids, it's terrifying. But that romantic myth just persisted.
And he digs up these incredible, like, cocktail party facts, these ways TB secretly shaped the world we live in, just because people were trying to deal with it.
Okay, you have to start with my favorite one, the cowboy hat.
Yes. Walk us through this. How on earth does a lung disease give us the single biggest symbol of the American West?
It's amazing, isn't it? So you've got this guy, John B. Stetson. He's from the East Coast, New Jersey. He gets diagnosed with consumption. And back then, the only cure was, fresh air.
Go west, young man. Go breathe the dry desert air.
Precisely. So Stetson goes out to the frontier, but he gets there and realizes the hats people are wearing are just awful. They don't block the sun. They don't keep the rain off. He's miserable.
So you're using his skills from his dad's hat-making business.
He invents a new kind of hat. Wide brim for the sun, waterproof felt for the rain. The Stetson.
The cowboy hat.
It wasn't invented by some rugged cattle rancher. It was invented by a sick guy from Jersey trying not to die of tuberculosis.
I will never look at a cowboy hat the same way again. And it wasn't just hats. It was fashion in general.
Hemlines went up. Beards came off.
Wait, the clean-shaven look was a TB thing?
It was all about hygiene. So in the Victorian era, men had these huge, bushy beards. But once germ theory started to take hold, people realized, beards are trapping spit and bacteria.
So being clean-shaven became a sign of being healthy, of civic duty.
Exactly. Same with long skirts. Women stopped wearing skirts that dragged on the filthy ground because they didn't want to track TB germs into the house.
So the flapper era was basically a public health campaign. Wild. Green also makes this kind of a stretch argument about World War I.
It's a sort of kind of argument, but it makes a weird amount of sense. Gavrilo Princip, the teenager who assassinated Archduke Franz Ferdinand and kicked off the whole war, he was dying of tuberculosis.
Ah, so he had that nothing-to-lose mindset.
Exactly. He and his co-conspirators were all young consumptives. They knew they were dead men walking anyway. That desperation, that fatalism, made them willing to go on a suicide mission. Maybe if Princip had been healthy, he thinks twice. Maybe the entire 20th century looks completely different.
It's just wild to think about. But let's get to the villain of the story, the thing causing all of this, the bacteria itself, Mycobacterium tuberculosis.
Green describes it as an evolutionary masterpiece. And it really is. It's ancient. They found it in Egyptian mummies. But its superpower is patience.
Which is so weird, right? You'd think deadly means fast, like Ebola or the flu.
But fast is risky for a germ. If you reproduce every 20 minutes, the immune system notices you right away. TB, it replicates maybe once a day. It's a tortoise.
And it builds that wall around itself.
That thick, waxy wall. It's like a coat of armor. It can get into your lungs and just sit there, dormant, for decades.
Just waiting.
Waiting for you to get stressed or old or malnourished, just for a moment of weakness. And then it wakes up.
So we have this ancient, waxy patient killer. We finally identify it in 1882, thanks to Robert Koch. Great. But knowing what it is doesn't kill it.
No. And Koch has actually made things worse for a while. He announced he had a cure to tuberculin. It was a global sensation. But it was a complete disaster. It didn't cure people. It often killed them by sending their immune system into overdrive.
What a PR nightmare.
But in this weird twist, tuberculin didn't disappear. It became the skin test. You know when you get that little bubble injected under your forearm?
To see if you've been exposed.
Yeah, that's tuberculin, a failed cure that got repurposed as a diagnostic tool.
So for decades, the only real option was the sanatorium. You know, the magic mountain. Go sit on a porch in Switzerland wrapped in blankets.
Which was really just quarantine with a nice view. It didn't cure the disease, but at least it stopped you from infecting other people. The real breakthrough, the miracle, didn't happen until the 1940s and 50s.
The RIP cocktail.
Yes. Streptomycin was first, then rifampin, isoniazid, pyrazinamide, ethambutol. Finally, we could actually break through that waxy wall and kill the bacteria. And in the wealthy world, TB death rates just fell off a cliff. We closed the sanatoriums. We moved on.
But, and this is really the pivot point of the whole book, we moved on, but the bacteria didn't. It just retreated to places we stopped looking at.
As the Ugandan physician, Dr. Peter Mugianyi, put it, the cure is where the disease is not, and the disease is where the cure is not.
Which brings us right back to Henry in Sierra Leone. He's living in the where the cure is not zone. He gets sick at 5. He starts treatment, but then things go wrong.
It's such a classic tragedy of poverty. Henry's father, who was likely desperate and probably mistrustful of the medical system, takes Henry off the meds. He takes him to a faith healer instead.
And it's so easy for us to sit here and say, bad move, Dad. But you can see the logic. If the clinic is miles away, it's understaffed, it's intimidating, and the healer is your neighbor promising a miracle.
You can understand the choice,
Yeah.
but the biological result is just catastrophic. It breeds resistance. The weak bacteria die off, but the strong ones survive and mutate. And Henry develops multi-drug-resistant TB, MDR-TB.
So the standard pills don't work anymore.
They don't.
And the treatment for MDR-TB, you have to brace yourself for this part. It is horrific.
They call it the injectables. For a long, long time, the only way to treat this resistance was with a drug called ketamycin. It is highly toxic. Henry had to endure daily injections that he said felt like fire under his skin.
But the side effects are even worse than the pain. It takes your hearing.
It causes permanent deafness in over 20% of patients. Can you imagine that? You're a teenager, you are literally fighting for your life, and the cure is slowly turning off the world around you.
And the most infuriating part is why this was the standard treatment.
Yep.
It wasn't because there wasn't anything better. It was because of this phrase that just keeps coming up in the book, cost effective.
That phrase is the true villain. The global health community essentially decided that treating MDR-TB with better, newer methods was just too expensive for poor countries.
So they used this strategy called DOTS, directly observed therapy.
Which sounds like a nanny state nightmare.
It is. It required health workers to physically watch patients swallow every single pill. The whole logic was, poor people can't be trusted to take their meds, so we have to police them.
It prioritized control over actual care. And for someone like Henry, watching him swallow a pill that wasn't even working and was making him deaf, that's not healthcare, that's just cruelty.
But there was a better drug, bedaquiline.
The first new TB drug in 40 years. It's a pill, not a shot. It cures the resistant strains, and crucially, it doesn't make you go deaf. It sounds like a perfect solution.
So why wasn't Henry taking it?
Money, corporate greed, and patent law. Johnson & Johnson held the patent, and they priced it so high that developing nations just couldn't afford it. And they engaged in this practice called evergreening.
Where you make a tiny, meaningless tweak to the drug formula just to reset the patent clock.
Exactly, just to keep cheaper generics off the market for as long as possible.
This is the part of the book where Green really gets fired up. He talks about the activists, like that girl in India, Shreya.
Such a heartbreaking story. She had MDR-TB. She needed bedaquiline. She had to literally sue the government and the pharmaceutical company to get access to it.
And she won.
She won the case, but she died before she could recover. It was just too late.
But her fight, and the fight of others like Fameza, who did lose her hearing to the old meds, it started to crack the wall. The price started coming down.
But for Henry, time was running out. He's 17, he weighs as much as a 9-year-old, his lungs are shredded. The standard cost-effective treatment is failing him.
And this is where we meet the hero of the medical story, Dr. Jerome Tefera.
Dr. Jerome, I love this guy. He's working at Laka Hospital, and he just decides, no, he's not going to let Henry become another statistic.
He goes rogue.
Medically rogue, yeah. He decides to cobble together a compassionate use cocktail for Henry. He calls in favors. He sources bedaquiline and other new drugs from different places, totally bypassing the standard supply chain in Sierra Leone.
He basically builds a custom cure for this one boy. It's a total Hail Mary pass.
And it's caught. It works.
The transformation is just incredible. Green describes seeing Henry later, and he's gained weight, he's grown, he's healthy.
And he's not just surviving, he's living. He becomes a student, he starts a YouTube channel, he becomes an activist himself. And what I love is that he and John Green become actual friends. It's not just author and subject.
Right. Henry actually mentors Green's son, who is also named Henry. It's such a touching connection.
It is, but Green doesn't let us off the hook with a simple happy ending. He pulls the camera back to the big picture. Henry survived because a famous author and a stubborn doctor intervened. What about everyone else?
And that's the core argument of the whole book. The choice.
Yeah. Green argues that TB is no longer a natural disaster. It's not an earthquake we can't predict or stop. It is a human choice.
He brings up the STP strategy.
Search, treat, and prevent. We have the tools, we have the diagnostics, we have the cure. And what's more, economists agree that eradicating TB would have a massive return on investment. It would pay for itself by keeping people healthy and working.
So why don't we do it?
Because the people who are dying are poor. Green compares it to COVID-19. When COVID hit the wealthy world, what happened?
We moved heaven and earth. We shut down entire economies. We printed money. We developed multiple vaccines in less than a year.
Exactly. We proved that when the will is there, the resources just appear. But TB kills 1.2 million people every single year, and because it happens in Sierra Leone and India and not in the suburbs of Chicago, we say it's too expensive to fix.
It's a really brutal mirror to look into. Green's final thought is haunting. He says, "We are currently choosing to live in a world where the deadliest infection is curable, yet still kills the most vulnerable."
It just forces you to question what we even mean by civilization.
Right.
If we have the technology to save millions of people and we just don't because the logistics are annoying or expensive, that feels like a massive moral failure.
But it's also hopeful in a very strange way. Because if it's a choice,
That means we can choose differently.
right, the bacteria is just doing what bacteria do, the epidemic. That's entirely up to us. We can end it. We just have to decide that Henry's life is worth the same as ours.
A powerful thought to end on.
It really is. From Victorian fashion to modern patent law, this book really does show that, yeah, everything is about tuberculosis.
It certainly is, and hopefully, by talking about it, we make that choice a little harder for people to ignore.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us. Subscribe for more bookish adventures and hit that like button if you enjoyed the ride. Don't forget to share the knowledge, spread the word.